Vince McMahon was WWE, and WWE was Vince McMahon. Till a Kingslayer stepped in and dethroned him. Vince was pulled down, not by a rival, a peer, or a colleague, but by his own son-in-law. A man whom he trusted with his daughter played the long game against him. With years of slow and calculated moves, as of today, Triple H sits on McMahon's throne as the chief content officer of WWE. But one question still remains. Was this just business? Or was this betrayal by the man he trusted? For decades, all roads in WWE led to Vince McMahon, be it creative talent, public relations, decision-making, contracts. Vince was the trunk holding these branches. Not like a CEO, but like a monarch. And you have to give it to him. The system worked brilliantly for years. Champions were created, and icons were born. A global empire generating fortunes for all alike, and most importantly, cementing a place in the hearts of the fans. Vince did a great job, but with power comes responsibility, but also people waiting to snatch it away. Vince headed the empire for over 4 decades, but age caught up with him, and cracks began to appear as there was no heir to Vince. No transition plan, or even a second in command. Soon, wrestlers and boards would start complaining about inefficient campaigns and chaotic planning. This was followed by several complaints about last-minute changes, to an extent where some shows were rewritten backstage. And for old-school Vince, business equaled loyalty and control. Instead of reassessing his shortcomings, people who did not align with him were pushed and discarded. Vince justified his rigid ways by the success he brought along. But he would soon realize that it was an illusion of power rather than power in reality. And little did he know that in the back seats behind all the lights and noise, there stood a man waiting to pounce at the right time. Long before Paul, Triple H, Levesque climbed through the ranks and were known for sheer discipline and commitment, he always chose the long route. Patience and resilience at their best. He was a beast in the ring, but off the ring, he always went the extra mile. He stayed late at work and observed booking patterns, got involved in creative meetings, and clocked all the specifics. But most importantly, he was learning from the man who knew it all, Vince McMahon. Triple H knew loyalty was everything for Vince. He never stepped out of line or got in his way. As a matter of fact, he gave Vince all his loyalty and locked in. Not just that, he even went on to marry the beautiful Stephanie McMahon. As per interviews and statements, their love story was initially an on-screen affair in the Attitude Era, where Triple H crashes Stephanie and Test's wedding, claiming he already married her in Vegas. The following month, in another storyline, Triple H even had a face-off where Stephanie betrays Vince to align with Triple H. During interviews following regular appearances alongside the game, Stephanie stated that she barely knew him before the storylines, and that he was even dating Chyna, but he always tried to flirt and woo her, and she eventually gave in. Vince was cool with wild storylines on screen, but off-screen, he wasn't having his daughter dating wrestlers. But Triple H had already earned his stripes with Vince, so he gave the nod, and voila! Triple H was inducted into the McMahon family, and is still happily married to Stephanie. But here comes the interesting part. Rumors suggest that Triple H influenced storylines and suggested regular appearances alongside Stephanie to build a rapport with her. They began spending a lot of time together for rehearsals and practices, and ultimately ended up together. He knew that power is easier inherited than taken by force, and maybe becoming Vince's son-in-law was a part of the long game. Triple H won hearts in the ring, and he won the board's confidence, demonstrating his managerial competency. So as a result, NXT was handed to Triple H, as it was a small project being nothing more than a feeder system for future rosters. But Triple H saw this as an opportunity, and not just a testing ground. Under his leadership, NXT reached levels of success that even surpassed main roster events. Storytelling that felt personal, arcs that suited wrestlers. NXT became the next big thing. Everyone noticed, including his bitter critics. While Triple H was getting praised left and right, Vince was questioned with wrestlers even claiming to fear being featured in events due to relentless pressure and toxicity. But as always, Vince ignored the complaints. He also chose to ignore the credibility Triple H was building. And this was because Triple H would never call him out or stand up to him. He made his moves slyly and in the shadows. NXT proved Triple H understood wrestling, but he never tried to leverage it. Instead, he let his work speak for itself. Vince ran WWE for decades, but when the heat got too heavy, they had to move on. In 2022, media channels reported the same thing over and over again. Vince McMahon was accused of sexual misconduct by multiple women, including a former WWE employee. He used hush money to find his way out of the allegations, but as investigations unraveled, what followed was even worse. The money, millions of dollars, mind you, was not from his own pockets, but from WWE's vault, a blunder he wishes he never made. His misconduct had already worsened matters for him, but the funds? That dragged him to a point of no return. Questions and threats by sponsors and stakeholders followed. WWE's board convened emergency meetings, and behind closed doors, a vote was cast. That was it for Vince. The board decided that he is a liability to the company's goodwill and decided to move against him. For the very first time, WWE would not see more of Vince, the man who ran the show. This was followed by the appointment of a new committee. His daughter, Stephanie McMahon, was appointed as the co-CEO, and Paul, Triple H Levesque, was appointed as the chief content officer due to the rapport and years of reputation that he had rightfully earned. WWE was scaling again. Viewership increased, ratings shot up, and morales were high. Fans felt the change almost immediately. Vince tried to slither his way back in during the WWE sale, just to find out the company had already moved past him, and he was deep in lawsuits, forcing him to finally resign as co-CEO, this time for good. Vince's downfall marked the collapse of one relationship beyond repair, and that was his bond with Triple H and Stephanie. Reports suggest Vince completely cut contact with both. No contact, neither in public nor in person. Vince considered them to be equally responsible for the loss of his position, and Triple H, as usual, let time do the work. No opinion, no press conference, or even a comment about his father-in-law. When asked about Vince's scandals, he did not defend him or even express support. He instead said, "The new board has his full support and cooperation, and that the company must move forward." And as being the chief content officer, he did not acknowledge Vince even once. No goodbyes, no tribute, and no farewell speech. As of now, he just sits on the throne that once belonged to Vince. Vince made WWE the spectacle it is today, and the person who played the long game to replace him. Was this betrayal or an inevitable consequence of business? Vince McMahon built an empire all by himself. Power, authority, and control. But he chose to ignore that power is never permanent and changes hands. Vince ruled through fear and authority, while Triple H waited to make his move. And finally, the end of an era. Business or betrayal, hard to say. But one thing is for sure, WWE is far beyond Vince's reach.